So two of Warhammer 40k's better combat patrols seem to have gone away, and we've got a disturbing and mind-enslaving new teaser for what's coming at the weekend. Let's talk Sisters, Genestealer cults, and a few possibilities for the future. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought I'd just do a quick update video to talk about a few interesting bits of news, a couple of combat patrol boxes going away, plus an interesting teaser as Games Workshop gears up to the reveal shows this weekend. Starting with the former, it seems that the Combat Patrol box sets for Adeptus Sororitas and Genestealer cults have been removed from Games Workshop's web store. I checked in a few different places and it looks like they're sold out online, both in the US web store, the UK one, and the Australia New Zealand one. Kind of interesting that they've gone away this early. When they went away for Orcs, Tau Custodies, and Chaos Space Marines, it all heralded them going for pre-order next week. Codexes and combat patrols being announced on the Sunday and then going up for pre-order the following week. I'd guess that that's probably unlikely at this point unless Games Workshop really surprise us. In general, they seem to have given us quite a big lead time as to reveals of new box sets and codexes coming, showcasing the new characters, any Battle Force box sets, and a few new rules and things really quite a long time before they actually turned up for pre-order and we were able to buy them. Given that it seems very likely that Games Workshop will be focusing on these couple of factions in the preview show this weekend, I would be kind of surprised if they literally just turned around and then announced them going up for pre-order the very next day. It's not impossible, I suppose, but my guess would be that we'd probably have a bit longer to wait than that. I feel like as Games Workshop combat patrols go, both of these were probably towards the upper tier of them. The Sisters maybe slightly above mid, the Genestealer cults perhaps one of the single best in the entire game. And it seems hard to imagine a situation in which Games Workshop doesn't make both of these worse. The on-paper discount for these versus the kits bought separately is some of the best in the game, and again in particular the Genestealer cult one is responsible for that faction being a lot cheaper to play than it would otherwise be. Starting with the Sisters, I must admit I really quite like this one, even though it does divide opinion a bit. I think I quite like box sets that have just so many different miniature varieties in them, and this one absolutely has that. Loads of really quite small units, a Canoness to lead them, 10 Battle Sisters, 3 Arco-Flagellants, 4 Repentia plus a Repentia Superior, 5 Seraphim, a Penitent Engine, and a Sororitas Rhino. The squad sizes are all a bit unusual and not how you'd normally field them out of the boxes bought separately. But waiting for the amount of miniatures for how much they'd cost individually, you get around about an average discount of around 48%, which is one of the very best in Warhammer 40k in theory land. In practice, it doesn't really quite equate, given that these are all monopose miniatures. Most of these hail from the Sisters launch box that came out in 8th edition, and they tacked on a Rhino and called it a combat patrol. I say it's still really quite good as a new player's purchase, gets you a lot of fun bodies on the board and some pretty cool miniature sculpts, though maybe some of the units aren't exactly optimal being fielded in very small amounts. The small Repentia and the Arco-Flagellants are generally not tended to be run in that sort of amount. Plus you don't get all of the war gear options you'd probably really like on the Battle Sister squad, like the multi-melter or more melter weapons. Broadly though, I think it was better than many of the Combat Patrol box sets out there. I did quite like the amount of stuff that you got. Otherwise though, for the Genestealer cult one, this one is one of Games Workshop's best combat patrols, and I think that's fairly widely considered to be the case. You get a Magus, 20 Neophytes, 5 Acolytes that you can build as Metamorphs, 5 Aberrants, and the Goliath Truck that you can also build as a Rock Grinder. The Genestealer cults don't exactly have an enormous model range, and historically have tended to really focus on their troops' choices to carry the army. This box set does seem really quite well set up for 10th edition in particular, lots of Neophytes and a few Acolytes in support, and a few Aberrants maybe to go infiltrating up the board. Since the points changes, the Goliath Rock Grinder or Truck might be a bit more tempting than they were as well. Overall, I feel like there's just little chance that Games Workshop alters this and it gets any better. Seems pretty well balanced for starting the faction overall, and compared with quite a lot of the other combat patrols out there, it just feels like maybe they've added in one more unit than you might expect compared with other boxes. I think it's genuinely quite an important factor in keeping Genestealer Cult to be a more cheap and affordable faction than they otherwise have been. Previously in the past, if you just went solely through Games Workshop's models, they could be one of the very most expensive armies to play in the entire game, rivaling things like AdMech. It does seem that both of these box sets are now basically gone though. As I mentioned, it looks like they've disappeared from the Games Workshop web store, though there will be a few available in things like discount retailers around the place, and maybe a few people selling them on other places like Amazon or eBay. Just taking a look at my channel affiliate links in the video description, it looks like Element Games has good supply of the Sisters one if you still wanted it, but not the Gene Stealers, that seems to have already gone. At time of recording at least, it looks like Gap Games has got a little bit of both of them left in Australia, though given low numbers I probably wouldn't expect that to last. Obviously no point in buying out of fear of missing out or anything, but if you did absolutely have your heart set on one of these and had already committed to it, might be worth taking a look when you get a chance. I think it will be interesting to see what they're replaced with though. I feel like the Gene Stealer Cult one almost has to get worse. The theme for the 10th edition combat patrols is that most of the time the discount has gone down, the points have usually gone down as well, and it was only the custodians in which they went up. Typically Games Workshop seems to be designing them that if you get the kits in the combat patrol bought separately you'd save around about 30% on the overall value versus the 46% or so that the Gene Stealers get currently. For the 10th edition updates, they really seem to be quite wanting to heavily flex compared with what they had before, try and get the other half of the kits from the faction if they'd already been selling one thing before. So I guess for Gene Stealer Cults I wouldn't be too surprised to see things like the Ridge Runner, the Jackals, or maybe even Pure Strains in there. I'm sure they'll still have some battle line units, either some Acolytes or Neophytes, or both. For the Sisters of Battle, I guess the question is whether they're deciding to go with the same monopose models that came out of the original starter set. And again, if they are going with the theme of trying to vary them really quite significantly compared with the previous one, I guess that would be a probably not. It might be that things shift around a bit to have multi-part plastic kits, which definitely means that you'll be getting far less miniatures in the box set compared with now. Given how expensive Sisters often are to put points on the board, I feel like we might be getting a quite low pointed combat patrol if that's the case. I guess perhaps if they bulk things out a bit by putting some Paragon warsuits in there, that might help a little. If the combat patrol was replaced as well, bear in mind that in the new codex there might be a chance that these smaller squad sizes of things like Arco-Flagellants and Sisters Repentia and the Penitent engine go away. All of those three can only be fielded in small units due to the existence of this box set, so unless these starter set kits stay around in the combat patrol, or maybe become some sort of online only deal like the Chaos Space Marine Warpforged or the Space Marine Vanguard Task Force, that could herald some datasheet changes in the Sisters Codex potentially. In any case, fingers crossed Games Workshop gives people at least something interesting for these. The trend so far has been for the vast majority of combat patrols both to get worse in terms of discount and points, the only major exception being the Custodies, which had quite a nice box set, very focused on lots of golden armour and lots of points on the board. Otherwise, talking of Sisters and Gene Stealer Cult, Games Workshop has given us another small teaser for the model reveals coming this week. They've got the Age of Sigmar one coming on Thursday, and gave us a small teaser of what looked like a Stormcast Griff Hound possibly. That one should have the big versus box of Stormcast Eternals versus Skaven. Then on Saturday we get some things for the Grim Darkness of the Far Future. The 18th of May has teasers coming for Warhammer 40k, the Horus Heresy, Legions Imperialis, and Necromunda. As mentioned, seems very likely that we get Sisters and Gene Stealer Cult goodness there, given that they're the next two codexes that have been announced by Games Workshop. Likely seeing some new character miniatures if neither of them get major range refreshes, maybe new combat patrols, possibly new Battle Force box sets if they continue the trend of those in 10th edition. On the teaser article that they did on Monday though, they gave us this rather interesting little head crab type thing. All very nasty with some sort of crab-like insectoid thing that's clutching around a great swollen brain, I think. Looks like it's quite a small model in any case, as you can see the flight stand that's coming out of it. The flight stand's absolutely enormous versus the model, so I guess whatever this is, it's probably not the main event versus the thing that it's shadowing. I suspect it might be a little hanger-on to a greater entity, so I guess it might well get its own base if it's got its own flight stand. I guess we'll wait and see there. At first glance I was kind of suspicious that it might be some sort of Gene Stealer Cult type organism, maybe a hanger-on for a character or new unit that has some sort of mind control functions, but from other discourse online and admittedly the paint scheme it maybe does look a bit more Necromunda versus 40k, and it doesn't really specifically look Gene Stealer even if it does look weird and alien. The reaction that quite a few people had to it was that it might be a 40k Enslaver, as on the face of it, it does look kind of similar to the artwork of them that you can see here. A great big bloated head thing with some weird front tentacles, even if the styling and the crabby sort of appendages are a bit different to the drawing. The Xenos race I wasn't really too familiar with. I was aware that they were a thing in the lore and I'd heard a little bit about them but didn't really know exactly what they did. From a bit of reading, it seems that they're other dimensional entities, creatures that are drawn to the minds of psychers and possess them, but maybe in a bit less of a florid way that demons do. Seems that there's not really too much end to the horrors that an unguided mind in the warp can attract. Once the Enslaver has managed to overcome the mental powers of its host, it can then slowly transform them into a living portal to allow more enslavers through into this dimension, and the creatures are able to mentally dominate other humans nearby. There's stories in the past of entire hives becoming little more than meat puppets to act out the will of their otherworldly masters. All very creepy, and just one other thing that can burst out of your head if you're a psyker, as well as demons, I suppose. And of course, it's not absolutely 100% necessarily that until we get confirmation. I must admit, it does kind of fit with the artwork, though. It does feel like it could be the kind of thing that you might be able to find somewhere deep in the horrors of a bunker under Necromunda from that teaser trailer that they had. Or it might be something that's looming out there in the ash waste, though maybe feels a little bit different in character to those models that they came out with. In any case, I'll be interested enough to see what this is part of when we do get the full reveal. Otherwise, as I mentioned in a previous video, seems very likely that we see some Sisters and Genestealer Cult information this weekend. Whether or not either of them are getting small character releases or a big range of new models, a good chance they might get a battle force, though a combat patrol seems guaranteed now that the old ones went out of production. Sisters do have a few obvious choices they could redo, the Death Cult Assassins and Crusaders. Perhaps redoing the Crusaders kind of similar to Blackstone Fortress would be nice, and we did have a couple of rumour engines that could well be Sisters, the Fleur-de-Lis ruin bit, plus this load-bearing parchment that you can see here, which is likely from some sort of jump character born aloft. Not sure if it's Sisters or Blood Angels at this point though. They've got quite similar styling to the ones on Celestine and the ones on Asterath and the Sanguinor. For the Genestealers, hopefully it's something a bit more interesting than yet another support character, as they're kind of overrun with them. If it is a character, hopefully it's something really quite interesting and different, and I guess they are getting their upgrade sprue for the new Cadians in the new Brood Brother kit, the one with the shotguns and sniper rifles and Cult Icon in here. Given the war gear changes, it's possible that they might get some sort of datasheet, at least perhaps for the veteran version of the datasheet, maybe similar to how Death Corps Krieg got their own version of the infantry squad for Imperial Guard. Otherwise, it'll be fun to see what we have for the others. As I mentioned, the Necromunda's teaser was delving deeper into Necromunda's darker side, some sort of shadowy vault door, maybe with shadowy horrors like Enslavers lurking behind it, who knows. For Horus Heresy, they teased the Mechanicum last time, should be a Solar Auxilia style plastic release for a bunch of automata and more. And for Legions Imperialis, maybe we'll see some mini Primarchs or other factions from the Heresy setting getting made in small. I guess given that they updated the Solar Auxilia near enough in tandem, it could be Mechanicum. Basically anything else in the Heresy era setting is fair game for them though, and I'm sure it'll get redone at one point or another. In any case, let me know what you make of all that though. What do you think that curious flying thing is, and what are your thoughts on the combat patrol boxes being removed? Look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep them coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.